Another area of concern is in regards to the formula for pi being in error when used during the construction of the molten sea. Kings 7:23, and he made a molten sea, 10 cubits from the one brim to the other. It was round all about, and his height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. Simply put, if one were to construct a bowl that was 10 cubits in diameter, then the line of 30 cubits compassing it, the circumference, should actually be 31.41592635358979322384338327995. Cubits, in other words, it should be pi, with the decimal moved over one place, and not 30, as the verse seems to be suggesting. This is correct. So then why would that verse tell us that the circumference is 30? Because that is the measurement for either the inside of the bowl or the lower part. Remember, there is a brim around the top, so it could very well be that the lower part of the molten sea simply isn't as wide as the top. Or we are talking about the inside surface, and therefore we must account for the thickness of the wall, which is a handbreadth. Chronicles 4 verse 5. And the thickness of it was an handbreadth, and the brim of it like the work of the brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies, and it received and held 3,000 baths. So basically we have two choices: add thickness to the equation, or account for a large brim at the top. Either way, the overall dimensions of the molten sea are exactly as stated, and thus there is no need to throw pi into the equation, or having to do lots of boring math in a vain attempt to make the verses work. Bleh. Again, there are no errors and no contradictions in the King James Bible. Yeah, but can we have our pie and eat it too? You bet! The circumference of the top brim of the molten sea is still pi with the decimal moved over, 31.415926358979322384338327995 cubits. Note that pi combined with the handbreadth may be an esoteric clue to the circle of life. Psalms 39:5. Behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Selah. Next. Let's look at those 10 lavers in more detail. First, Kings 7:31. And the mouth of it within the chapiter and above was a cubit, but the mouth thereof was round after the work of the base, a cubit and an half. And also upon the mouth of it were gravings with their borders, foursquare, not round. Whenever we run into the word foursquare in Scripture, we should stop and meditate on the deeper meaning. As mentioned in previous chapters, foursquare seems to be a hint at a type of fourth-dimensional logic and a connection to higher dimensions. Quantum entanglement comes to mind. Notice the square and compass theme again. 1 Kings 7:35. And in the top of the base was there a round compass of half a cubit high, and on the top of the base the ledges thereof and the borders thereof were of the same. Again, we are given a hint at a type of on earth as it is in heaven theme. And when we combine all of the instructions for creating Solomon's 10 lavers, we see a clear reference to the Mazzaroth zodiac yet again. The 4 cardinal directions of north, west, south, and east are each represented by familiar avatars with a slight variation. North has cherub, eagle; west has ox; east has lion; south has palm, man. And finally, we review the final days of Solomon's temple, in which the lavers and molten sea were modified. King 16:17. And King Ahaz cut off the borders of the bases, and removed the laver from off them, and took down the sea from off the brass and oxen that were under it, and put it upon a pavement of stones. He did this in order to replicate a pagan temple he saw earlier. What King Ahaz did to the temple and furniture was the equivalent to genetic engineering, man creating idols that lead to the image of the beast. In other words, blasphemy. Ultimately, everything was destroyed. 2 Kings 25:13. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of the Lord, and the bases, and the brassen sea that was in the house of the Lord, did the Chaldees break in pieces and carried the brass of them to Babylon. What a sad fate for such a magnificent structure.